know the same person, Rachel Hardcastle. She recommended that I talk to you, and I'm really happy that she did. You're in England, huh?
I am in England, yes.
Oh, fantastic. What part?
So we're in Harrogate, sort of north middle England, I guess.
Oh, okay. So around the same type of area, Yorkshire.
Yeah, we're in North Yorkshire. So I think believe Emma's in Bradford. So I mean, from North American distances, it's very close. In England, it takes like an hour to drive there or
An
something.
hour. It takes me like an
Maybe
hour to see my
probably
kids,
less, but yeah.
and they're just like subway stops away. How long have you been writing for?
So I started writing in 2006, but it was more of like a hobby.
Yeah.
So I got really sidetracked into a lot of other stuff, which is where most of my focus has been.
Oh, gotcha. What were you writing in 2006? What was your
Uh,
starting work?
yeah, so science fiction.
Science fiction. Okay,
Um,
good stuff.
so basically, the one that I published most recently called Game Set Deathmatch.
Mm,
Um, that's the first one I properly finished. I started in
great title.
2003 with some fun, but that was the first one I finished. Yeah,
That's a great title. Was it game set rematch?
Deathmatch.
Deathmatch. Okay, it's kind of got a chess feel to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Was it about chess, or was chess a theme throughout the novel or
it's
the story?
actually first person video game based.
Oh, cool.
So it's it's a real world, and I sort of built it up from first person video game ideas. So when I started writing it, I was really into a couple of games, and I really liked the lore. So I sort of started building my own version of that.
How do you feel about the book Ready Player One?
I actually like the movie a lot better, to be honest.
What? Really? That's the oddest statement. I
I
love the
don't.
book. I love the book. I did not like the movie though. Did not like the movie at all.
So
I couldn't watch it.
which one did you read first or do first?
I read the book. I think
I
that
read,
poisons you, right? Don't you agree? Like as soon as you read the book, there's nothing compares, in
yeah, so
my
it's
opinion.
whichever one you get, probably whichever one you get most emotionally invested in. Because once I thought they did a good job in the story they told in the movie.
Yeah,
It was noticeably different from the book,
yeah. There was a
and
big scene taken out that I really was disappointed they took out. The whole dungeon thing, right? That was one of
yeah,
the most exciting parts of the book was this interweaving of Dungeons and Dragons into the storytelling. I love that so much.
yeah, it was quite interesting how they sort of tried to incorporate the character, but they left out a lot of the stuff from the book.
So
I
I mean,
liked in the sorry,
yeah. Go ahead. No,
I
please.
was
No,
going to say
that's the hardest part about this medium is that you
it.
can't tell when the other person is going to be talking. So you end up stepping on their toes a lot. Sometimes you just have to go with it. You know what I mean? Whoever talks the hardest, longest wins.
Yeah,
So, yeah, were you writing around that same time, that story, or did you see the movie and did it motivate you, or had that come to you before any of that really materialized in the publishing world?
no, I wasn't even aware of it until the movie came out, to be honest.
How
So,
disappointed were you? Were you
uh,
disappointed, or were you like, I'm on the right track, I'm just a few months behind?
no, I think I've gotten used to because so a lot of the ideas from the original, like I started writing another story, which I didn't know where it was going to go. I really liked a lot of the background, a lot of the characters. It was set 1,000 years in the future, and I've got used to sort of the technology advances very quickly now, right? And a lot
Yeah.
of the ideas I put into that story were already getting used and taken out. I think also sort of the whole, when the Matrix came out, even earlier than that, and that's sort of a lot of the ideas that you have around science fiction and whatnot, you start seeing them all of a sudden appear
Yeah.
so you just get used to it
Yeah. It's
basically.
very true. It does happen like that.
It gets disappointing,
It
but
does.
for me, the more disappointing thing is uh, seeing them actually come into reality.
Oh yeah,
Because
because
I mean,
then
I
it's not
love it.
fiction anymore, is it? It's
Yeah, I
reality.
love
It's
it,
for
but all of
science
a sudden,
reality.
yeah, all of a sudden I can't use it in my book anymore as science fiction. Like I have to completely reimagine it in the real world as sort of science past, basically.
So when
Uh,
you're writing your science fiction, specifically the story that we've already talked about, are you trying to reinvent the wheel, like going forward? Are you writing about things that you would like to see in the future, or are you basing it on complete fantasy, where you're just recreating everything?
uh, so I tend to like to create my own settings. As I said, I tell people I'm too lazy to research actual settings enough. Um, so I grew up in well outside of a small town in rural Canada. So I never really got invested in any cities, and most of my stuff is set in the city scenarios. So I don't have any cities in my mind that I know really well. So what I do is I create my own, and then I try to, base the ideas on how they would work around real cities. And then in terms of technology, so I try to use technology that seems like it would be plausible to me, and stuff that I would love to see.
Where do you like to write? In the intermediate future or far into the future?
I've got, so this could be a long discussion right as it is, but I have sort of all the way through. So I have stories from, one of them I've almost got the draft done on, is about now 20-25 years in the future.
Yeah.
And then
Are you connected when you're writing? You said there's a range between now and one. Obviously there's an infinite amount of future ahead of us. We don't know how much, but are you writing within the same world, or are you rewriting the history as you go? So it gets frustrating, doesn't it? Because you'll produce a piece of fiction, and then the next one you'll be like, oh man, I need to self-correct here. Do you split, or do you maintain?
Mine's been a journey basically. So I write slow enough in terms of the stories, but the ideas flow very quickly. And so what's happened is I've generated a huge number of story ideas, which I started fitting into different actual books, and then started fitting those into different series and into different universes.
That's
and then
the way
I've
to do
merged
it.
all of those universes into one multiverse.
That's the way to do it.
I'm now
Absolutely.
building all of that. Yeah.
I have a lexicon of work that I've been collecting over the years as well, and I've come to me that you can start working on those bits and pieces and form longer works. I mean, you're rewriting things anyway. Why not change a name and a little bit of a theme? There it goes.
Yeah,
a chapter.
sure.
It's brilliant. I mean, there's basically a longer work that I'm working on now that I could just go forever with, or course correct and do something fantasy based. Are you thinking that science fiction is it for you, or would you like to play around within speculative fiction a little bit more?
So I do like to write sort of short pieces that are contemporary.
What's short?
So short, like maybe a few thousand words, maybe even 1,000 words. If I'm warming up for like the NaNoWriMo or something, I'll
short
go for
short fiction, right?
series.
Short fiction can be profitable. You can make money with it. It's not bad. Yeah. So consider anything between 1,000 words and like 9,999. That's a short fiction story, right?
Probably a bit less on the upper side, maybe. But
well, anything above 10,000 is a novelette.
Yeah,
so that's the next size up, and then you have your novellas and your novels or whatever. But anything between 1,000 and 9,999 words is short fiction.
Sure, yeah, I tend to be on the shorter side of that when I'm writing it. Sometimes I'll do a quick write for like an hour or something, just whip out something, just to sort of get the creative juices flowing.
I love that stuff. I love it. I mean, I call it flash fiction. I try to aim for like pieces of between 50 and 500 words. That's the stuff I put up on my blog, right? Anything over 1,000 words, though, I consider short fiction, and really it should deserve a rewrite and become something more, hopefully, that you send out to the big guys.
Yeah. So like the 1,000 words, I guess, call it flash fiction then. That was the stuff I'm posting on my blog as well, sort of the quick writes.
How does that work? How is it working for you? Are you noticing an audience developing with the short fiction?
I haven't been consistent enough, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm working on it now. I'm sort of starting to get serious. I've been more of a hobbyist for a while, and I'm starting to sort of knuckle down a bit and develop platforms and stuff.
Well, now's the time, right? You're stuck inside. Are you still quarantined over there?
Yeah, probably more than. Well, you guys are in New York, so you're pretty strong there.
New York. Yeah, I'm really quarantined over here, and we like it. Like, hey, we're okay with quarantine. Just keep it coming. We're good. Nobody's protesting. Nobody cares. It's like, let me just stay in my apartment for a little while. I'm happy.
Yeah, it's not so bad for me. I usually work from home anyway, so.
Exactly. You've been quarantining already for the longest time.
Yeah, I've been more regular with exercise now.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
I was running a little bit, but I hurt my foot, man. I got a bone issue. I think I could run, but I'm not sure. I just don't want to risk it. So now I feel the lack of activity. What's your go-to? What do you like to do for exercise?
So I'm probably further down that destroyed path than you are. So for me, it's mostly walking right now, and I've got to start sort of a bit more, maybe what you call calisthenics or something.
Calisthenics are hard. Man, I got bad
Well,
shoulders now. I just don't want to do push-ups to save my life.
yeah, no, true. My joints are all. So my main problem is leg issues. So bad. I've had like 4 or 5 surgeries on my knee.
Oh yeah, that's
Really
awful.
bad
That's
pain.
awful. Were you an athlete?
Not officially. I mean, I played a lot of sports, but nothing serious. But it was sports injuries that did it. So
That impacts your writing, doesn't it? I mean, understanding physical limitation and pain and disappointment. It's just there's nothing worse than coming out of a surgery or going into a surgery knowing that you're just limited
yeah,
physically. You're not the normal person that you were beforehand.
yeah. Well, the other thing with writing that's related to physical problems is, of course, the sitting all the time. Um,
Yeah, I know, right?
the first NaNoWriMo I did in 2006, I had a really bad chair, and I was in the chair for like 6 hours a day trying to get these 2,000 words a day out. And by the end of the month, I had given myself a repetitive stress injury in my shoulder.
Oh yeah.
Still returns to this day.
I'm living in the tiniest little apartment right now, away from my family. We're quarantining separately,
Oh,
and I don't have a desk here at all. I'm just like I have all my monitors sitting around my couch.
oh, jeez.
It's it's been the most awkward experience trying to write, but I think
Yeah,
I've gotten it. I'm actually able to produce work now, so I'm happy.
that's good. Yeah, yeah. Couches aren't the best ergonomic sitting arrangements, are they?
No, no, and you really do need to be comfortable to write. I mean, it's amazing how fat you could sit there for the first hour and be okay, but as soon as you move, it like ruins the rest of the day. At least for me, anyway.
Yeah,
I can't get comfortable again. I have to go to sleep for 8 hours, wake up, and then I'll be okay.
restarted. Yeah.
Restarted like completely. I'm like a dog. You ever touch a dog while it's sleeping? Just they cannot lay in that spot anymore. It's, so I'm sorry. Did you answer my question about being a science fiction only writer, or do you plan on
Oh,
playing around with different genres?
I don't think I got to that. Yeah. Uh, I play around a little bit, but I'm really science oriented. So I mean, I'm a scientist by training, and
Oh, okay. What kind of scientist?
so I was a biochemist. I
Oh,
haven't done
cool.
any research for more than 10 years now.
It makes it hard, doesn't it, to go from knowing
Yeah.
how the world works to pretending how the world works.
Well, I think it gives me some a good insight, but it does structure me. So I'm really sort of fixated on having everything have an explanation. So I do have a magic verse that's part of my multiverse, but my magic is very based on scientific principles. So it's just a different way of accessing the fundamental aspects of nature. Rather than using technology, they have a way of calling on it through, say, biology. Um, and it's limited by various laws of motion and whatnot as well.
I love that website. I think it's called TV Tropes or something like that. The wizard that uses scientific knowledge to make magic is always my
Uh,
favorite.
yeah, that kind of thing really attracts me.
I mean, there's already magic at play. I mean, even the theories that you put on stuff that you think you know is just a theory. There might be more at work. We can only see so far down, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it's all just well, experimentation and speculation. Um,
What's
you know,
fascinating to me, I read the other day that a tree, when it grows a new ring, it actually produces stem cell like things that fix itself. It's perpetually healing itself as it grows.
well,
I mean, it's absolutely how I mean that's fantasy. It's something that
yeah,
you would put in a fantasy world.
yeah, it could definitely fit there. Well, I mean, it's so amazing when people start. Every once in a while, you hear someone talk about the end of science, like we know everything. You're like, what are you talking about? We don't even know a tiny fraction of everything.
Well, that's what religion was back in the day too, right? It
Yeah,
was trying to explain how things work within
yeah,
the limitations of the language itself. I mean, what's the limitation? What is this and how does it work? God. This
yeah,
answers so many questions. You know what I mean? God is in actuality, you break it apart. It has little tiny springs and screws. You know what I mean? It fits together perfectly. It has an actual definition, and that definition is long worded. The term is God, but it means
yeah.
so many freaking things.
It does. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, getting into fantasy is interesting. I write science fiction mainly right now myself, but I do have this world that I'd like to develop based on that. You know what I mean? Trying to define what the universe is. and how it exists in terms of realities. You write in a multiverse, you said.
I am, yeah, yeah. So I've recently, within the last couple years, I've figured out how to put it all together in a multiverse.
Thank
And each
God. I mean,
story is sort of fed into the ideas, so I'm quite happy. Even this morning, I was discussing I go on a walk with my daughter in the mornings, and we were hashing out sort of, there's some kids stories built into this multiverse as well. And I was describing them to her, and we were feeding off ideas of each other, and sort of fleshed out that whole set of like 4 different characters, each with their own series, all meeting up at some point. So,
children's stories, as in told to children in the novel itself, like children sit down and listen to this old lore, or you're actually producing children's books with
no, these
illustrations and
would
whatnot.
be, yeah. So these would be probably about 12-year-olds. So that particular set is, so within my whole multiverse, I have a whole range. So I do have adult fiction, YA fiction, and children's fiction built into it.
So you've been publishing for a while then.
Well, I have been publishing for a while, but I haven't published a lot of this stuff yet. so it's still in progress.
Oh,
But
interesting.
I've been publishing since about 2008. I mostly publish other people's stuff right now, just
Are
because I
you,
like
so
books.
you're an indie publisher
Yeah,
or
so I call it a facilitated self-publisher. Uh,
facilitated self-publisher, right?
yeah.
Excellent. What kind of services do you offer?
So what I do is I basically will publish a person's book for them using the self-publishing technology that exists. So I don't pretend to be anything other than helping you use the technology that you could use if, I say if you maybe for people who don't have the desire to learn how to do it, or maybe they don't have the time to learn how to do it, or don't want to do it because they just want to outsource the publication.
Oh.
Uh, so I do it that way. Yeah.
Do you edit the copy edit? Do you do the editorial process for the book itself?
So I'm not interested in that. I'm not trained for
Yeah.
it either. So I will read it through, and I will say, and I will ask people in advance. I will say, has this been edited? Are you happy with the editing? And when I read it through, I will also say, I'll suggest if I think it needs more editing, then I will suggest, oh, here's, maybe you want to send it to this editor or not. But at the end of the day, if they're happy with how it is, then I will publish it for them.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. I couldn't edit anybody either. It takes so long to do my own work. I would just, how do you
Yeah,
find the energy to give anybody the actual worth of what they're paying for? I would just, try to, it's fine.
yeah,
I'm sure it's fine.
yeah. But I do know a few editors. So, and obviously I know, like we mentioned Emma before, and I know her model is slightly different than mine business model, where she edits people's and then takes on the ones she likes. Whereas I feel I'm providing the publication service. So for the people who want to publish their work, but maybe, like I said, don't know how to actually do it or whatnot. So I
So
will provide training as well and consultation.
interesting. Is it easy to find clients?
There's been enough around here to keep me going for a bit. I have one guy who's regular right now. He's doing I hesitate to call it a children's picture book, but it is a picture book series. And it would seem on the face to be children's, but it's very sort of spiritual, metaphysical. So it's
Interesting.
it's quite interesting, yeah. But we're on book 11 of his now. So
What do you think of the indie publishing world as a participant trying to
um,
make a living, build
oh
business out of it?
yeah, well, any publishing industry to make I mean, as a publisher, as an author.
I mean, right now you're a publisher. Even
As,
you're yourself. You're your own client.
right.
I
So
mean,
as a publisher,
you've taken on the masthead, and I don't think that you can any longer consider yourself just a writer,
just a
right? I
writer.
mean, you're a content creator because you have your website, but then this thing that you're doing is traditionally called book publishing, bookmaking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as a I think any publisher has a difficult time, because if you just think about the numbers behind the money, like you can only charge a certain amount, especially for, I think, for indie authors. But if you do the math, sort of the amount you can charge versus the time it takes you to actually prepare the book and publish the book, you have to have a lot of channels of income to really make it a financially viable situation. So right now, for example, I'm trying to sort of broaden into promotion and providing sort of indie platforms. So I'm working on a bunch of online platforms, and just sort of a center where people can where people can come and put their content, like book trailers and whatnot, and interviews, do interviews.
You're conjuring the platforms, or do the platforms already exist?
So I'm using, well, let's say building channels on those platforms would be more accurate, I guess. So so largely, for example, a YouTube channel or various other video channels, where I would
YouTube is so profitable. Like if you can get an audience on YouTube, I think you can pretty much write your ticket. I mean, that's it for you. You're pretty much good to go.
Yeah. It's hard to say with books. I've seen one.
I totally disagree. Like you follow these people sometimes on YouTube, and they'll come out with a book, and all of a sudden they're on the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh yeah, that case for sure. Yeah.
Maybe they're pretty. I mean, I believe that the thing that came out about TikTok just recently, how they were glamorizing their app by kind of deleting the ugly people videos and putting forward the pretty people videos.
Right.
I kind of feel like that social media as a whole. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
let's get this pretty person up front, because I mean, there's a lot of people, if you click on their profile pics, they look good, tiny, but when we bring them up, there's no reason they should be wearing all that makeup.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? There's a motivation behind it. Unfortunately, I mean, tell me about your YouTube platform and what you're doing for authors. Are you using interviews or you're doing other things?
Yeah, so I'm just getting it started. So it's a very busy time, and it's inspired by the lockdown. But yeah, what I will be doing, so I have a channel I'm starting, well, the interview I did with Emma, which will be going up.
She's a great interview. She's a really great talker, yeah.
So that was an author talk. So that'd be the author talk playlist, where I do specific interviews with authors who I think have interesting stories sort of behind the story.
Yeah.
Then I'll be having playlists for, well, book talks, sort of like 5-minute segments of like short book reviews, I guess.
Okay.
And then hopefully I want to be enticing people to send me, indie authors to send me their book trailers. So I'll have like one place. So the idea is to build over one place where there's a good guaranteed viewership, that people can then upload their stuff to, and sort of have a good chance of getting a good decent number of views and whatnot, without having to sort of try and build their own channel from scratch, kind of thing.
I want to read my stuff and incorporate it with a graphic and publish it also on my channel. I think that's one thing I'm missing. I think also, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I will having author readings as well would be another thing on my channel.
I feel like, I mean, that seems to be a big thing right now, where you can generate a lot of follows if you can get people to be aware of that you're doing it. It's just really difficult to I mean, it's difficult to sound good anyway. You know what I mean?
So that's one of the things that I'm hoping that this channel will provide a place where, because like you say, it's very hard to build viewership on your own channel. It takes a lot of work. But if I provide a channel that has viewership, then people can put their content up there, and without having to do the whole work of building their own viewers. I mean, they obviously can if they want, and would be nice, because I'd love to sort of cross-pollinate various channels as well and share each other.
You're not alone, right? I mean, I think you're onto one thing in terms of you need to be multifaceted. You need to have a lot of different things that people can discover. I like these interviews, not because I think they're entertaining, because it's hard. You have to be a certain mindset to get through an hour of two people talking back and forth. Especially with the technology downfalls, there's a hiss, there's a little bit of whatever. You have to be really interested in what's being said. So that's very, very niche. But if you can find out what that person's doing throughout that interview to make their own stuff stand out, you might have a chance to put other stuff out there that'll work, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's always a learning experience, what I like. Yeah. You see what other people are doing, you sort of incorporate it, or you analyze whether you think it'll work for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, even getting the interviews themselves is just so complicated in terms of having to send out 100 invites to get 25 actual interviews produced.
Yeah. So networking, I guess, is the best idea, as a word of mouth, if you can connect.
Even networking, right? How do you do that? I mean, I live in New York City, and you said locally you have a lot of resources, which I find fascinating, because I've been here for 8 years, and I scratch occasionally, and something, oozes out that I need to take advantage of. But there's, you don't want to take advantage of everything. So in your area, do you find yourself able to take advantage of a lot of things, or do you have to pick and choose?
Well, as a publisher, I mean, I have enough authors right now to keep me busy, who want to be published. In terms of resources, we're lucky that the local library is very inviting to authors. Not all of them are. And so I actually started an author organization
Oh, good.
a
Cool.
few years back called Promoting Yorkshire Authors. And I've since left sort of the directorship of that. But that sort of brought a lot of, more than 100 Yorkshire authors together in a common group kind of thing. And that sort of opened some doors around the region. But there's still a lot more, because that organization, one of the reasons I left was that it wasn't going in the direction that I thought would be more beneficial to authors in the long term. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of yes, a bit of no, right? There are good opportunities, but here, especially in North Yorkshire, it's quite small. So in terms of getting, like, I'm looking for ways to get the big numbers, as I'm saying, right?
The
and to
interesting thing to
also
me,
help other authors do it.
yeah, that's the thing that wasn't it. It's like it's very vampiric. It's very cannibalistic. Is probably a better word, because you're only talking to other writers, and those writers want audience too, and then you end up with an audience of writers.
Yeah, well, that is the problem, isn't it? And it is starting to be addressed by, if you follow any of the sort of book marketing gurus now, there's the hint that they're starting to realize that this is some of the problem, especially with fiction writers. With nonfiction writers, less so, because you have a ready-made audience. But with fiction writers, we don't know how to grow an audience other than sort of being found by a big publisher and having your book spread everywhere. And
How
so
many
what they
things to
tend to
read,
do,
right? That's supposed to be the thing that works more than anything else. Like I beat my head against the wall all the time, going, "Why aren't I being read more? Why aren't more people going to my website? Why aren't I being recognized as a novelist?" And then I look at my Amazon page and I realized that everything I've ever published, I felt embarrassed about, so I pulled it back off again to continue working on. That's
yeah,
why there's no success there. You know what I mean?
well, that's
Looking at
definitely
my
one. Yeah,
I'm looking at my efforts going, your efforts have not been publicized, dude.
yeah.
Publicize your efforts, man. And when I do get publicized, when somebody buys something that I write short fiction wise and publishes it, I feel a little bit of acknowledgement for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can agree with what you're saying, because I feel sort of the same way. One of my struggles has been finding which works, which of my projects I should work on in terms of, I think it's because what do I really believe in? And I find that I probably suffer a little bit from the imposter syndrome. So I pick the projects that I believe less in to start, because I don't want to fail them, or I'm not
Yeah.
concerned if I fail them. So,
Imposter syndrome is interesting,
yeah.
right? John Scalzi said something interesting a few
No,
years
I
ago that
saw.
resonated. What?
No, I saw an interview with him. He was interesting because he said he doesn't suffer from imposter syndrome.
No, he
So,
doesn't. I don't know if he does or not, but I mean, if he doesn't, this is the evidence of that. He said a few years ago in a tweet that he has no locker books, no books in his writer locker waiting to be published. Like everything that he's ever written, he has put in a novel and it's gone out. So
yeah,
basically, at that point in his career, he was like, everything that I write from now on is brand freaking new. And
yeah,
it just dawned on me. And I already explained this to you in the beginning part of the conversation. I almost said the relationship. The beginning part of the conversation, I was talking to my wife or something. The beginning part of the conversation, I said, bits and pieces make longer works. I mean, you just have to find out how the puzzle pieces match. You know what I mean? And that's really developed into a longer or better world development for me anyway.
yeah, yeah. A lot of it though is also, I mean, spending the same amount of time on the plot development as well, because that can really, really lose you. So I mean,
Plot
just
development comes with practice, doesn't it? More than
yeah,
anything
yeah,
else.
yeah.
Because
Practice and work. Yeah,
I mean, I think when you're working on a story, if you work on it long enough, you're going to realize when you're falling apart. And it really works well when you're trying for brevity. So, like how we're
yeah.
writing shorter fiction,
Short
and you
fiction.
spend like a couple hours working on that 1,000 words, you kind of see how you want to bridge those sections together. And that's what you do in a novel. You just take that section, and that's a chapter, and you bridge that chapter with the next chapter. Bridging chapters is easy, bridging paragraphs is hard.
It can be a bit more than that. I mean, because you do find the short fiction authors, that some of them that don't like or don't feel comfortable writing novels because um, they're unable to sustain, let's say, the pace or the interest level through the whole novel,
It's
um,
hard.
in terms
It's
of the
hard.
plot and whatnot. So I heard an interview from Tim Powers one time, the American fantasy author, Anubis Gates. And he was saying when he started writing initially in university, he just thought writing was putting a bunch of events together for your characters, stringing them along till they go a bunch of places, and then, you know, when they get there and finish it, that's it. And so he wrote like 200,000 word monsters, and they realized
of like 30 short stories basically that could have started alone and not been part of a larger arc.
Yeah, and so I think what he was getting at that point was that, you know, the plot also needs a certain amount of crafting in terms of you know, the plot structure, the rise and fall, the 3-act structure, bringing in the right people in the right place and things like that.
I think that's why they start you as short fiction in writing programs, because you can't write you can't write a short fiction story without knowing where you're going. It's impossible. You'll just write and write and write and write and write. I mean, it really came together for me when I realized, okay, what's my concept I'm playing with? How do I end it? All right. How do you start it? Or how do you work your way up to it? I know what I want. It's the easiest story in the world. How do you write it? The only thing that's stopping me at that point is being lazy. If I don't know where I'm going, I'm dead in the water. And the same thing with my longer works as well. If I don't have an ending, if there's not a place I want to go, then I will flounder and there'll be no direction.
Yeah, I tend to have trouble with middles, to be honest, which is a problem.
Middles. Why?
Just because there's so many options.
I see.
Don't know how to weave my way through. And there's, you know, quite often there's
you don't have an ending. That might be your problem.
I'll have endings. Yeah, I'll see the ending. In fact, you know, I want the big battle. I can see what I want it to do. I'll have the beginning, but meanwhile, I want to create an epic trilogy maybe through this whole thing, right? And I don't know where any of the middle's going.
Maybe you don't have a trilogy. I mean, that's fine too.
Yeah, that's possible.
At the end of the day, I mean, at the end of the day, a story is as simple as a need that needs to be addressed immediately. You know what I mean? You have a guy who's standing over the body of somebody that he may be killed or didn't kill. The desire is what to do with that body, and the ending is getting rid of that body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I do because one of the issues I realized probably close to 8 to 10 years ago was that my main characters, my protagonists, were a bit too wishy-washy. Like, I had really interesting secondary characters because they had purpose, they had focus and direction, and my main character was kind of going along for the ride. So I was like, well, that's the wrong main character then, right?
That's a very passive character. You need to give him something to do.
Yeah. So
it's a very frustrating moment when you realize dude has just been basically had stuff done to him for the last 2,000 words. What's going to happen now?
I have more than 2,000 words in some cases.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully you catch it really soon.
Yeah.
There's a noir guy who was writing in like the 20s, and I can't remember his name, unfortunately.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember the name either.
He talks about structure and how you have a story that's about 6,000 words long. A short story is what he's working with, because back then it was actually profitable to write short fiction. He says what you do is you break it up into 4 sections: 1,500 words, 1,500 words, 1,500 words, 1,500 words. You limit yourself to exactly that. 1,500 words, you set up the problem. The next 1,500 words, you put your guy farther up in the tree. The other 1,500 words, he's, you know, about to die, and the next 1,500 words, you bring him back down again. You know, it's a really simple concept. You know, you look at a mountain to the top and then back down again. The back down is very short, 5 sentences, a word or something. But, you know, you bring him all the way to the top and everybody thinks he's going to die, including him or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the hardest journey ever.
In your fiction, do you write primarily from one perspective, or do you have a number of points of view?
I try to write from many perspectives. My short fiction, I try to limit it to one perspective because that makes it a little bit more sensical for the reader to get through.
Yeah, you can't read through otherwise in short.
You don't really want to switch. But yeah, I do switch around a lot. I try to show various perspectives in my work. In terms of like having one hero that I write from the perspective of, no. You know what I mean? I don't have one character that everybody's going to be seeing my work through. Every story is really different.
Right.
Every story has, hopefully, I mean, that's why I like the idea of the multiverse that you mentioned earlier. The idea of writing where it really doesn't matter in the reality that you're writing, because you can easily just flip over to another one. I love alternate history. How do you play with the multiverse?
How do I play with it?
Yeah, how do you play within your multiverse? How do you play?
So for me, what I have is individual stories set in various universes at various times. And so each story will, well, some of the stories feature primarily one or two characters. Some stories, like the original when I started, the sort of far future story was meant to be like a space opera, in which case it's got, you know, like a dozen different stories, you know, moving within the main story. And then the idea would be each of those stories, I now have to build in enough parts of the overall giant story that I can bring them together eventually in one series where they all kind of meet up.
Oh, really? So you're going to intertwine your multiverse stories?
Yeah. So there's one, so I have a multiverse that's actually built upon a common core, which has its own issues as well. And so the characters, some of the characters can travel through the multiverse.
Oh, it's fascinating. I love that. How do they travel through the multiverse? You want to share, or is that proprietary?
Different ways, to be honest. So one of my universes is a superhero universe. One's a magic universe, and one's sort of the technologies universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the superhero universe, you can largely make up all kinds of funky stuff, super science or super magic. And so some of them have portals. I don't want to share too much specifics, but I have some characters who you'll maybe take like certain disabilities that would exist normally in people, but you put a different spin on them. So you say, all right, say for example, a mental issue that gives a person a different perspective on the world that may be harmful to the way they're interacting with people, but maybe they have that issue because what they're perceiving is actually true. So they're seeing the world differently, and maybe you flip the script so that they're the ones seeing the world accurately rather than everyone else. So in a little bit like a Matrix way, maybe, but if you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Or too specific, yeah.
I think what popped in my head immediately was the M. Night Shyamalan movie. What was it called? Unbreakable, or Mr. Glass. They have these characters that are superheroes, and they have subtle superhero powers to where they can live their entire lives and not really kind of realize that they're superheroes.
Right.
There's some genetic variation or whatnot. I like it. It's subtle. I talked to a guy recently who had normal people behaving as superheroes. The only difference is they were rich. You know, they'd have the money. They're like a bunch of Batmans or something.
Batman, yeah, exactly. That's what you're saying.
It's neat. As a normally science is played with very loosely in comic books. Does that bother you as a scientist?
No, I mean, well, because I've always been interested in science fiction, so it depends, I suppose. I think maybe it's getting, well, I don't know. I can't tell if I'm getting older and more ornery, or if it's getting a little bit worse in some of the modern comic books.
As in, what do they call it? When they make up the science to fit the plot, like the lithium crystals or something like that.
Maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call it that, yeah.
I
mean, occasionally it bothers. Most of the time it doesn't, because it's just stories. Sometimes if they get it sort of really terribly wrong, that's the kind of thing that sort of grates on you a bit. Because it's not, I mean, we have the internet now, so it's not difficult to get the basics right, at least.
Dude, I read about physics, man. It's hard to get the basics right sometimes.
I suppose it's very mind-bending.
I need to get this to work. And, you know, the concept of traveling at the speed of light, for one thing, that's a trope, right? It's science fiction-y trope. Go ahead and try to put physics on the speed of light, right? It's so freaking difficult. Then you have to get into Hawking radiation and stuff like that. And like, you can do it, but there has to be specifics. And then you could do it within a vacuum. And what if you can recreate a vacuum? And somebody's always going to tell you that you're wrong. Somebody is always just waiting.
That part's true. But then the boundaries of what we understand keeps changing. So if you follow some of I think it was at NASA or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, they're talking about actually trying to develop warp drives now.
Yeah. What's their warp drive? Did you look into that?
I haven't looked into it in great detail, so I can't really offer any insights.
I remember a few decades ago, they're like, oh, we invented the transporter. And I was like, really? And I'm like digging on the internet. I'm like, where is the transport? No, we theoretically did it. What we
Yeah.
did was we had a box over here and we had a box over here, and we theoretically transported an idea. Actually, I think, what was it? It was like an atom or something they transported.
Even less than an atom, I think. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a subatomic particle or something.
I love it though, man. Star Trek. This is a fantasy. It's not even science fiction. It's not hard science fiction. It's science fantasy, if anything else. They made up how this stuff works, and it's impacting our world. Fantasy
Yeah.
magic is impacting our world. I freaking love it.
Yeah, well, some of the favorite ones, I guess, it's not a stretch to imagine replicators.
No.
And then
We already have them, right? 3D printers are kind of
3D
like
printers,
replicators.
yeah, it's the start, yeah. And Arthur C. Clarke's space elevator. There's a lot of people who are really keen to get something like that going.
Did you see Ad Astra?
I didn't know.
Oh, you didn't see that? That was really good. Brad Pitt movie.
Yeah,
The beginning of it starts out with the astronauts, which is basically, like the Space Force or whatever, working on a space elevator. A gigantic structure just shooting up into space. It's so fascinating what we can do if we stop being assholes to each other.
Well, we will get there. It's all it's a what do they call it? Random walk process, I guess.
Man, that's another guy I talked to called it incrementalism. We go scant inch by scant inch, working our way to something better. I think the unfortunate thing for us, our generation and our children and our grandparents and whoever, is the last 100 years has been so freaking ridiculous in terms of technological advancement that we're kind of jaded in a way. We're like, where's the next big thing, yo? Basically.
Now, well, especially when you got the internet, and then you've got the kids too. Everything's sort of, it's like the whole dopamine hit, isn't it? All the cool thing, and then you want the next cool thing and the next cool thing. You can't even enjoy
My children will never remember a time they didn't have a tablet or some kind of device like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, I was like 23 years old when I've got dial-up internet in my home by myself. That's old.
Well, sorry, yeah.
I spent most of my life without it. I was analog for so damn long.
Yeah.
And then went digital. It's like it changed completely, and I can't go back. I know everything now. With the type of a question or sentence or word, I can figure it out. It's amazing.
So amazing, yeah.
Within reason, because I still don't really know what Hawking radiation is. And the only reason I even mention it is I've got a novella that's almost done, and I just have to explain this one little tiny thing so the plot can continue. And it bothered me to the point where I put it away.
Yeah, I don't like when that happens, when you get stuck on how the heck am I going to do this connection bit.
Yeah, how many novels do you produce a year now? What's your plans in terms of production going forward and whatnot?
So I've kind of temporarily switched out of the writing mode for the moment. I do have quite a number in near finished draft mode, but I've switched to the focusing on this sort of platform and development of services and whatnot. It just seemed to be this year was that's where my head was. And then the pandemic has sort of really inspired me, with all the online requirements kind of thing for communication and whatnot.
The pandemic has definitely inspired me to reach out and start this podcast again. And writing is just the writing thing. I can't imagine giving it up for any amount of time. Yeah, I don't think I want to publish other people's work either, though. I think that would be too hard.
I love just creating the books, like the creative process of producing the book. But in terms of I still create the background stories. Like I said, I had a discussion with my daughter today. She's like, "Oh, that's a great idea. We should really get that one down." So there's some thoughts whether I'll move ahead with the kids' stories. Because
how often do you publish the little stuff, the little fiction pieces? Do you have a schedule, or you just do it whenever you get one up?
Yeah, it's kind of random at the moment. Again, because my focus has switched a bit. So we'll have to see. I will be writing sort of nonfiction articles around publishing on my Utility Fog Press site, but the fiction side has been kind of a little bit on hold for the moment.
Let me ask you a question. I'm publishing something in September, a short novella. I think it's like 160 pages or something. And for some reason, my format's all messed up on the inside. Not like messed up horribly, but there's gaps in between the paragraphs, like double spaces between the paragraphs. Do you know why that would be? Like everything else is 100% perfect, but there's just a gap, an extra gap in between every paragraph.
And you're doing it in Word?
No, I did it in and uh, not Word, but the other one, the free one.
Open Office?
Yeah, Open Office. I did it in Open Office.
On a PC, right? Not like a Linux or something.
No, yeah, I did it on a PC. And I went back into the document to check to make sure, sometimes you have to check, don't put a space between the paragraphs, and that wasn't the case. So I'm just
It's
wondering.
not, because I mean, I had someone recently contact me about their formatting. They removed some columns and everything got messed up. It's not always obvious. The only other thing I could think of is, I mean, you check the paragraph, the individual paragraphs where that happens to see if there's.
The document is perfect. It's a standard formatted document. There's no standout issues, but the novella looks really good, except for that one problem. And I wonder.
I'd have to see the document to properly figure it out. Like with
Well, I mean,
hers, she had like I could easily fix the margins, the big margins, but then she had another problem where part of it was the right side was indenting weirdly, and I had to go through and I discovered that one of the settings in the paragraph menus on Word was set to mirror the left-hand margin, so it was creating an unnatural indent on the right-hand side.
I mean, you have to be breaking that to make that happen, right? You have to be playing with stuff that you don't understand to make that actually occur.
Yeah, in her case, it was because she was working with columns initially, and then she removed the columns, and it messed everything up basically.
Wow, that's not right. Don't work with columns. Why was she working with columns?
Yeah, well, you need all kinds of ideas when you're publishing people, but hers was that she was writing it on the one column, on the left column, and using the right-hand column for making notes about where the story should go and things. Whereas normally what you do is use, the comments, do the comments, or as she started doing it in different colors within the text. But of course, there is the comments built into Word as well you can use, which makes it easier. But not everyone.
There's a lot facilitated in these tools that I have no clue how to use.
Yeah, well, that's
the
the thing,
basics are fine. But
knows, yeah.
I mean, Photoshop I'm on all the time to manipulate graphics for whatever. But there's unlimited potential that I don't even know how to access.
Yeah,
I'll hear like hints of it on the internet. It's like, you can do this miraculous thing with Photoshop. How? And I can't find any information. I don't know. Man, so I don't know when we got started. I think we got started a little bit after 11. But I wanted to know what you have coming up that people should be aware of. Do you have anything that you want to basically prep the world for?
Yeah, for me right now, it's mostly watching out for the Utility Fog Press. So my book showcase channel on YouTube, I think.
When are you going live? When does it go live?
As soon as I get a few things edited, and I decide I'm having sort of branding issues because I just talked to someone else who I was asking if they wanted to put some of their videos on, and they were saying, well, my publisher doesn't like the idea of putting their content on someone else's channel, which looks like another publisher. So it's a branding thing right now, and I'll sort of rebrand that. I think I'm going to call it Indie Book Showcase.
Ask them why they even have anything. Why would they be sending you anything that's already been published by somebody else? They should be sending you fresh stuff.
No. So I asked them about a video because she posted the video as a reading because they can't do book launches anymore, like live book launches. So the publisher had them do a reading online, and so I asked if they wanted to put it on my channel.
Oh, I see.
So they were, so it was back and forth that way.
But the network,
variety on there.
The networking process of this whole thing is really awful. I will tell you that much right now. I mean, you saw the agita that we got into, and then the email that we were back and forthing in somehow got messed up to the point where I had 4 drafts of emails in there that I was writing you, and for some reason or another, never got sent. So it's like, my God, man, how could this get any more messed up? And then Skype didn't work, and like blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened with Skype. That's weird.
The worst thing that's ever happened to me, I had a really fantastic conversation with this former sergeant combat vet who was building this massive role-playing game type thing. And we talked for like an hour and 15 minutes. And, he shared with me that he had PTSD and, blah, 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 blah. And at the hour and 15-minute mark, I looked at what I was recording and I only saw my voice registering.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, dude, say something. He said something flat. I was like, oh shit, hold on a second. So I started playing the file back. It's just me talking and giant gaps where we filled in the space. I was like, oh, this is so depressing. Just before that, YouTube had decided that my videos, if you look at my YouTube channel, I only have one type of video. It's me talking to somebody. But they had decided that those videos were against the platform and banned me for a little bit. I had to petition, whatnot. I had no bad content. So they gave me back my channel. I have no infractions or whatever. But that's what happened is I couldn't do hangouts with this guy. And it just cascaded into a complete royal mess. He was so mad at me, he decided never to talk to me again.
Did YouTube ever tell you what, or give you a reason for that? Or do you think you just fell foul of the algorithm?
Do you have you ever looked up a movie that you wanted to watch and found a YouTube channel that promised to play that movie for you, and you clicked on play and it was just a poster and it played nothing but sound, and the poster was saying, come to this website to watch the movie in full or something along those lines?
No, okay, I think I might have seen
like,
those.
Yeah, you've seen them. They run for the length of the movie. So if the movie's like an hour and 21 minutes or something, there'll be an hour and 21 minutes of silence with this dumb website thing on there. I think that's what they thought my website, my content was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it's just a picture, and then there's the sound file that plays underneath it of us talking. Right. And in the beginning, I don't know. Maybe they didn't hear it. I mean, it's just a bot. You know what I mean? It's just a robot that decides. If it might have flashed my graphic and said this guy's whatever
spammer.
It never happened again, thank God. But it really messed. And they banned me from Hangouts Live. They did everything possible to mess up that interview. Wow. I mean, potentially they didn't want me to talk to the guy. Maybe it was like government conspiracy. Maybe this guy had secrets and they were afraid he was going to tell me some of them.
Yeah, that's it's the era where we're learning more and more of conspiracies being true.
Why not, right? I tried to talk to a guy in Bahrain. We were going to talk about, he was an alcoholic and he wanted to talk about AA and struggling with that and still creating websites and meeting people and networking and whatnot. And I couldn't talk to him. There was just static. Every time he said something, there was this, and I would talk and he would hear me fine. And then he would answer. I was like, dude, I can't hear you. And I'd be like, and I swear to God, he could hear me fine. I just couldn't hear him. It was just so odd. It's just those two stories that just make me wonder,
Wonder if you're on some watch list.
Am I on some watch list? Am I on some watch list now? I don't know. It is a weird world. I hope that we get to a different place with this quarantining coronavirus bullshit.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's very. A lot of people have, I think, good reasons to be concerned, don't they? Because you got to trust your government a lot. You
guys aren't starving. I think there are people in my country starving right now who can't get the support they need.
That's true. England is generally not too bad for that. I think the government provided some money for people as well.
Yeah, it seems
I mean, well, yeah, your country with a lot of even the hospitals, because they're all private, they're saying, well, even the hospitals are suffering financially because they can't do most of their surgeries and whatnot.
Yeah, I had a doctor make an appointment today without talking to me, a video conference appointment. No, I'm canceling this. Goodbye.
Yeah. Can't do surgery by video conference though, can you?
Yeah, honestly, looking at it, I probably should have just had the appointment because it's just a drug appointment, How do you feel? Are the drugs working for you? But I want to go in and get labs and stuff, the full treatment. If I'm going to have $25 copay, I want to get the whole thing. Exactly. I'm going to have to go in again eventually anyway. I hate the whole thing. I mean, this is a horrible time and also the most glorious time because it's never been as good. And it only feels bad because it's happening to you. And if you put it in perspective, we actually live miraculous. I can't believe I get to talk to you.
Yeah, across the ocean.
An hour, man. You know how long, when we were kids, if we wanted to be pen pals or whatever, it would have taken months back and forth like this.
Yeah, that's true. I remember the pen pal days too, yeah.
I remember being a kid going, I want a pen pal, Mom. You're going to have to write letters. You're not going to write the letters for me? No, I don't really want a pen pal then.
Yeah.
I don't know. Life is cool, man. And I really am happy that I got to talk to you. Where can people find you on the internet?
So I'm at edwinhrydberg.com or alternatefutures.co.uk, and
Alternate Futures.
my other company is utilityfogpress.com.
Utilityfogpress.com is also a really fantastic name as well.
Oh, thanks. Quite like it also. Yeah, whatever interests people, go to either my fiction site or my writing site, and there'll be something for you.
Perfect.